Mr Prada wasn't just another creator, he was a TikTok icon. From comedic skits to his laid-back approach to life, he managed to attract millions. But beneath the jokes and the viral clips, something darker was brewing. At first, people just couldn't put their finger on it. He was just different. And as his behavior became more erratic, fans began to ask, what's really going on here? In today's video, we're going on a journey to uncover the unraveling of a man that went from internet sensation to the center of a criminal case. Mr Prada went from admired to controversial and finally to infamous. So let's dive into his rise, the missed signs of his decline, and how it all led to the moment where everything changed. It didn't take long for Mr Prada to hit it big. His brand of humor felt real to people, unfiltered, unapologetic, and just relatable. He had an eye for what the internet wanted, which catapulted his early videos into viral status. With every new post, it seemed like his follower count would skyrocket. And don't get it twisted, his rise to fame wasn't random. He had an unmistakable magnetism. Whether he was poking fun at trends or sharing day-in-the-life moments, people found a connection. But behind that connection, a different story was beginning to unfold. We didn't know it then, but the very traits that made him relatable were masking deeper struggles beneath the surface that wouldn't appear until some time later. But for now, his rise was progressing just as quick as his downfall. Some time had passed at this point, and the year was 2023. Mr Prada had amassed millions of followers and was at the peak of his influence and fame. Now with fame came influence, and with influence came controversy. Mr Prada wasn't just a funny guy online, he was becoming someone people looked up to. His feed was full of comedy, daily amusement, and the occasional opinionated rant. But as the attention mounted, so did his persona. It started evolving into something more intense, more unfiltered. This was evident with the whole copying content era of his career. See, his rise to fame wasn't entirely free of criticism. In fact, a good part of his content was accused of being borrowed. Other creators started calling him out for lifting jokes, skits, and even entire video formats. For a while, it seemed like every new video of his mirrored something familiar, a trend, a funny rant, or even a life story that someone else had shared first. Things got so bad that the nickname Victims of Prada was given to the people whose content was copied by him. What made this even more controversial was that Mr Prada just didn't seem to care. As fans and critics alike began piecing together instances of copied content, Mr Prada doubled down. Addressing the accusation in his classic "I don't care" style, he posted unapologetic responses with captions like, "Everyone copies, get over it," and his followers were divided. Some loved the bold, unfiltered attitude, whilst others felt disappointed, with some saying things like, "People are like, at least he admits to copying people," as an excuse for this man profiting off of copying and pasting videos. Mr Prada just trying to stay relevant, but he simply just did not care. And it was around this time that Mr Prada started sharing more of his personal struggles on his page, but fans just saw it as another layer of relatability. Moments of him losing his temper, not caring about what people said, or saying bizarre things just felt like part of his charm. But slowly, there was a shift. People started noticing inconsistencies, moments where he seemed lost or agitated. These were more than just random rants, they were glimpses into a changing mindset. For the fans, it seemed like just another part of the show, but maybe it was a warning. This is where the story begins to turn. Over time, fans began noticing a shift in Mr Prada's energy. He was going from eccentric to downright concerning. The worst thing about it is that it wasn't just something as nuanced as his energy changing, but it got to the point where he became physically unrecognizable. He shaved his head, shaved his eyebrows on camera, had this weird white paste on his hair, acts that seemed both spontaneous and unsettling. Fans started joking about his breakdowns, brushing them off as moments of being real, but his behavior wasn't just eccentric anymore. It was unpredictable. He'd talk about violence in ways that made people uncomfortable, mentioning revenge and anger. Some fans laughed it off, thinking it was all part of his online persona, but others were growing concerned. A few started wondering if these outbursts were just cries for help, warning signs that nobody was paying close attention to. Unfortunately, there weren't enough of these people, and as things are with the internet, if it's not someone ridiculing themselves or getting hurt, it gets swept under the massive rug that is the cyber world, until it's too late and there's nothing that can be done. It's easy to see now that these moments were more than just shock value. He was revealing a mental unraveling that, looking back, was hidden in plain sight. But then came the news that took everyone by surprise. But for now, he was just seen as the crazy guy on the internet that shaved his head and was acting crazy. Just a year passed, and then came the news that took everyone by surprise.
On TikTok, he's known as Mr Prada with more than 8 million followers.
Life is a prison. Get me out.
But now, the social media star has millions following the story of his arrest in the brutal murder of a popular doctor seen here on a personal video from his website.
Out of wounds, there'll come great growth in self-improvement.
Mr. Prada, the internet's unfiltered comedian, was now in the headlines for something much darker. But how? How did things take such a drastic turn? How could a man that went from seeming somewhat troubled on an app for kids become the primary suspect of a murder case? At this point, his social media presence was at an all-time low. Posts were sporadic. His once loyal fans were now questioning everything. Where they once saw quirks, they now saw warning signs. It was as if the persona he'd built had slowly morphed into something unrecognizable, even to him. People who once looked up to him started to distance themselves, whilst others felt betrayed. The details of the case were truly shocking, and they went a little like this. One weekend in late September, law enforcement officials announced that a well-known counselor and life coach, 69-year-old William Nicholas Abraham, had been found deceased, his body rolled up in a comforter and bound with duct tape on the side of a highway in Tangipahoa Parish, Louisiana. The cause was determined to be blunt force trauma, and authorities classified it as a homicide. What the public didn't know just yet was the connection between Abraham's tragic death and Mr. Prada. On Monday, the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Office released surveillance pictures of the unknown suspect to the public. The suspect being Mr. Prada himself, whom detectives said was the last person seen driving Abraham's car. That same car was then spotted again by Baton Rouge police on Monday afternoon, when Thomas sped away from an attempted traffic stop, where he ultimately crashed and fled the scene. At this point, images of the surveillance footage and the traffic stop had been released to the public, and people began to think, wait a minute, isn't that Mr. Prada? And from there on out, it wasn't that hard for the police to identify him and clamp down on him. Just a day later, after receiving a tip from Louisiana that Thomas was local, Mr. Prada was spotted sitting on a bench and he was taken into custody by police. Authorities also found condemning surveillance footage showing Abraham arriving at Mr. Prada's apartment complex at 11 a.m. on Saturday, just a day before he died. And witnesses at the site told detectives they saw Thomas struggling to drag an object wrapped in a tarp downstairs before loading the tarp into Abraham's car and driving off. The same car Thomas was later seen driving in surveillance footage. A deeper search of Thomas's apartment revealed a gruesome scene. Police discovered a significant amount of blood throughout the apartment and a variety of sharp objects, suggesting a violent struggle had taken place. DNA testing later confirmed that the blood was Abraham's, and authorities believe Thomas attempted to clean the scene, likely to cover his tracks. As it is now, Thomas is facing charges of murder, resisting an officer, aggravated criminal damage to property, and unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and things just get worse and worse as the evidence piles up by the day. Mr. Prada's story isn't just another tale of internet fame gone wrong. It's a reminder that the line between reality and persona can be razor thin, especially when mental health struggles go unchecked. Fame has a way of amplifying everything, both the good and the bad, and in Mr. Prada's case, the darker side eventually took over.